Hey, we are live. This is Dr. Pam Perry, and I'm so excited with our guest today. Not only is he from Michigan State, go green, but he is an entertainment publicist for the culture, all things. He loves Beyonce, so do I. But we have a lot in common. So I want you to hear his story, his backstory, all the things he writes for Forbes for the culture. He's written for Essence. He's interviewed Viola Davis, just all the things. All the things. I tell you all the things. I'm so excited about this show. So anyway, you'll hear from Kenny Williams Jr. right after this.
Welcome to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast. Join Pam Perry, veteran PR strategist, Emmy award-winning producer and publisher of Speakers Magazine, who will show you how to crack the code in getting out there to get known. Each week, she either interviews her media friends, PR colleagues, or she just goes solo, offering you strategies on publicity, publishing, and platform building. So listen up to hear how to get booked on media places and on superstar stages. Now, here's your host, Pam Perry.
Hey there. So I'm going to bring up Kenny, but I never like to read their bio while they're on camera. It's kind of weird. So I do want you to know about Kenny. Okay. I'm going to read the formal bio because it's just so good. So when Kenny looks back at his beginnings on Detroit's East Side, where a village of beloved Black women and elders first wrapped their arms around him, he recalls the stories in vivid detail as you've slipped through a wrinkle in time with him, and all his favorite characters from the past are right there. Like his iron-willed maternal grandmother, kept alive by her children's memories of all the mischief she made and all the hell she raised on foods who had it coming. Or the grandfather who drove him to school every morning, using his memories to transport them back to his Alabama youth along the way. Or the aunts who came of age in the days of hip-hop's fluorescent 80s and 90s. I'm probably like Auntie Pam, right? Who never missed an opportunity to get fly, always performing the alchemy of taking whatever life's given you and leaving you something fabulous in its place. There are many things to say about Kenny's journey up to this point, his awkward beginnings in a world that demanded conformity and obedience to traditional masculinity, and he was never suited for or much interested in. His early obsession with pop culture, celebrities, cartoons, superheroes. He said, I was a nerd. His time at Cass Tech, another green and white school paper. That's what we also have in common. I was with the Cass Tech newspaper. And Michigan State, another green, Odysseys, and his first taste of semi-professional storytelling. The single mother doing her damnedest at every step along the way. The apprenticeship at the Detroit Free Press, and I don't know, Kenny knows I worked there as well, or his communication work at Michigan State's Office of the Provost, and the atmosphere of racism and homophobia that permeated the place and drove him back into the arms of telling the stories of people who are like me, and the odds to become the people who they were meant to be. And in this way, it all flows back to the community he loves the most, the women and queer folk and elders he first sat at the feet and learned how to tell stories from before he was even realized that he was actually in an apprenticeship that would be the course of his life. And these everyday giants of the Black oral tradition who first gave him a North Star to follow on a quest that's led to countless stories in places like Blavity News, Forbes, and Essence on Black life, survival art and self-creation, and the stampede of interviews with celebrity artists, actors, and entertainment icons. When the talk show he deserves finally comes, and it will come, and you can see some of it on Instagram, you can expect more of what's made Kenny the sought after and admired voice up to this point. His dedication to the idea that every one of us deserves a life of rich and colorful as the stories and beloved ones passed on to us. I had to read that for Kenny because that was like, oh my God. Oh my God. That was a bio. Okay. Now that was a bio. That was what we call Michigan State. That was like Cass Tech, Michigan State, master's degree, all the things, right? I was like, we're going to read this bio.
And Dr. Perry, thank you so much. I have to credit my friend Eli Day. He I interviewed with him and he recorded it and he came up with those beautiful words. And he's one of my favorite journalists as well. I have to credit him for telling my story in that way and really doing it justice. So thank you.
Yes, because it was the words. You weave in the words in it, and then you put it on the website. So it's a bio that people enjoy reading instead of one of those bios. It's like, oh my God, any bio that starts what I was born in. I was like, okay, we were all born. Those are words unnecessary. It's like, we don't need that. So I was like, we've got to read that. But the whole point of it is that we get to know a picture of you before we even meet you.
Thank you so much.
So you're on the east side. So I'm going to talk about some of the commonalities that we have, right? So I was born on the east side. I don't know how far east you were in Detroit, but I was like DeQuinder. I don't know how far east you were.
I was Meringue and Kelly, but we moved to 8 Mile and Van Dyke when I was in the 10th grade.
All right. So the 8 Mile Van Dyke, you know, that was kind of like in that whole area. We could probably ride bikes to each other. Went to Cass Tech. I don't know if you're new school, old school.
I'm new school. I graduated with the class of 2012.
Okay, so I was in the pickle factory. Okay, then you went to Michigan State. My daughter went to Michigan State, class of 2018. Okay,
comp sci. Yeah, because I was 16.
Yeah. She said she follows you on Instagram. Her name is Aubrey Perry. She says she follows you on Instagram.
Oh my gosh, I know. We've had it before. Yes. That her name sounds really familiar, and I feel like we've had really positive interaction. Yes,
she's comp sci major. Won some scholarships and all that kind of stuff. She loved Michigan State. Listen, you guys had some fun up at Michigan State. When it was time for her to graduate, she says, "I don't want to graduate." I'm like, "You gonna stay up there and go to mass? What you gonna do?" So yeah. So then she went to Michigan State. Then you did your master's. And then you also worked at the Free Press. I worked at the Free Press. That was my first job out of college. I went to Wayne State. So I was at the Free Press for about 7 years. And we were in the old building. So you were probably in the new building when they were combined, Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News. So what department were you in the Free Press, or what program were you in the Free Press?
I was in the apprenticeship program. So that was a program right after I graduated from high school. It was the summer before going into Michigan State. Because at that point, I was like, I want to be the Black man version of Lois Lane. So I was
Clark Kent, Lois Lane. Yeah.
I call myself the Black Clark Kent now, coincidentally. So yeah.
So one of the things that I loved growing up was Brenda Starr. I don't know if you remember Brenda Starr. That was a cartoon too. She was a reporter. And Brenda Starr was a redhead and, doing all the things. So they didn't really have but anyway, that was cool. So when you were at the Free Press and you were in the apprentice, was it Grimm was there?
I met Mr. Joe Grimm. Yes. So coincidentally, I met him. I think we had a meeting when I was in college, when I actually went to Michigan State a few months later in August, because he was really good friends with my supervisor while I was at the apprenticeship. And then a few years later, Mr. Grimm, we went to some networking event. It was with the National Geographic, and they invited students to come to it. And I was a senior at the time. And I was like, Joe, I don't know how to network. And he was like, well, let me show you how. So he took me across the whole room, introduced me to all the big wigs. And then when we were done, he was like, now that's how you network. And I was really grateful too, because I'm an introvert, but people don't believe that. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe Grimm had probably at that point had been at the Free Press 30 years. Yeah. At that point. So he knew everybody. So that is good that he took you under your wing. So you were at the Free Press, went to Michigan State, working at the school newspaper at Cass Tech. So you've always had this vision to really tell stories, just like we read in the bio. And let's talk about some of the people that, well, first of all, also to Forbes for the culture. People, so they know we have the little thing of you on Forbes. But I want you to tell that story, how that came about. But I just recently joined Forbes for the culture.
Yes, congrats.
And let me tell you, I feel like Auntie Pam up in there. I said, "Ooh, all y'all, but Aubrey need to be in here." I'm like, "What am I doing up in here?" But I'm nosy anyway, so I'm gonna always be up in there. But tell us about how you won the Forbes 30 under 30, I guess you would say, experience, because I didn't really go into that, but that was a feat. And so tell us how that happened.
Yeah, thank you so much. So in grad school, I believe it was, I can't remember if it was my first or second year in grad school, but I went to Michigan State for my master's. I was studying public relations. I think it was my second year, the fall of my second year. And I wanted to go to the Forbes 30 under 30 summit because I was studying public relations. And I'm one of those people, like, I always want to be in certain spaces to network and get to know people and just really get my name out there. So I was like, well, how do I get to this summit? Because I was a grad student, and Dr. Perry, grad students, we don't be having money. It's hard. Like, you have to stretch what you got.
Mm-hmm. And you were doing an internship that paid how much?
So the internship that I was doing the summer prior, it was paying nothing. They gave us a $20 stipend every 2 weeks, literally $20 every 2 weeks.
That's crazy. People do not realize the heart that the communications people have, the PR people, the journalist people, that they have heart. They're not doing it for the money. It's not like, oh, I want to go into this and this, and I want to work for the newspaper, radio, and television station because I'm going to make big bucks. That doesn't happen until years later. At a certain point in time, all your friends that majored in accounting and engineering, computer science, cybersecurity, they're making checks.
Yes.
But we are PR people. When we first starting out, we get $20 stipends every 2 weeks. So anyway, continue.
And what's crazy about that, Dr. Perry, is I wish that I could say like that was in the 90s or the 80s, way back then. That was only in the summer of 2017.
Oh my God.
By the time I got back to grad school, like my final semester or my final year of grad school, and I went back in August because that was a summer internship at a PR firm in New York, of all places. So I didn't have nothing saved up because what could I have saved up? So I was like, I want to go to this 30 under 30 summit, but I have no money, no way of getting there. But I was a graduate assistant in the housing department at Michigan State. Okay. And I was telling my supervisor, and I'm still grateful to her for her to this day. I was like, this is something I want to go to, but I'm going to be real. I don't have the money. And she was like, well,
how much was it though? Think about it. How much was it?
It was probably with the flight. And I just did the flight because I stayed with my friend, one of my best friends, Ashton. So the flight was like, it was like $800. And after earlier in the day when we were looking at the prices, Dr. Perry, I promise, it was like $200 or $300, but then it went up that day, and I was grateful because they still footed the bill and paid for it. So,
but to actually go to the event itself is like $1,500. The actual ticketed event, the ticketed event itself was $1,500. Plus, you have to fly there. So we're talking like an easy almost $3,000 if you add some, if you want to eat, right?
But the 30 under 30 summit, they actually paid for the admission ticket into it because I got the 30 under 30 scholarship and I was named a 30 under 30 scholar too. So I was grateful that they had paid for it. And then I got like this cool title to go with it because Dr. Perry, it was looking bad if that didn't happen.
Oh my God, that is so cool. So you got a chance to go there and actually see. At that point, you're probably like 23 years old. 23 or 24, going to the 30 under. Now that they come to Detroit and they come to the Opera House and that sort of thing. And I looked at the tickets and I was like, Aubrey should probably go to that. And I looked at the ticket price. It was like, young people won't be paying almost $2,000 to go to an event. Like, really? Unless Beyonce is there. I mean,
I love Beyonce.
Unless Beyonce is there, it's like there's no real reason to really be there. But anyway, so that was out of 1,000 or so people that you really filled out the application and actually got it. And then they did a mock cover, which I have. That was the little teaser. That was the mock cover that they had you on there as well on the Forbes 30 under 30. Kind of like a vision board for the future, right? That's kind of like what that is.
Yeah, so there was this, because there was so many cool activations. That was actually a product of one of the activations where you could go and you took the picture like on the mock cover. You can go and take your picture, then they put it on there. And it felt like manifestation to me. It kind of still does. And I'm hoping that one day, I pray that one day that actually is a reality where I am on the cover of Forbes. So I
Yeah.
feel it is manifestation.
Yes. I mean, your life up until this point has kind of been rolling in that way. So all the different things that you've done. So tell us about some of the stories that you've done. You've written for Essence. You've written for the Culture. So how did for the Culture come about? Because you weren't writing for the Culture when you went to the Forbes 30 under 30. So how did that come about?
So in 2020, I started as a writer at Blavity News. That was like my first entertainment writing gig. And that, that year was the world that everything just stopped. COVID, we had the presidential election. It was so much
George Floyd murder.
Yeah. And when I was getting more into entertainment journalism, I was like, I love it here at Blavity, but I also want to write for other publications too, like simultaneously, just to get more experience, just to get more bylines. So I applied. Well, I found out that Forbes the Culture was a thing. So I applied for it for like entry. Then I got in, and then I was like, okay, well, how do I like write for this? So the editor, and she's a good friend of mine, Brienne, she was the editor at the time. I messaged her. I was like, hey, Brienne, I'm interested in writing. How does it go? What is the process like? And she walked me through it, and we interviewed and whatnot, and it happened. But Dr. Perry, what most people don't know is that prior to that, I had applied to be a contributor for Forbes. And the person, and I'm not going to say their names, but the person who worked there at the time, she knew that I worked at Blavity. And when people ask to see your other bylines and clips, I sent her the stuff that I was doing at Blavity. And she said that, we don't really take writer. She was like, this is not verbatim, but she said it in so many words. Well, she did say this verbatim. She was like, we don't really like write about stuff that says like, yes, queen or yes, girl. And I kind of felt like it was being condescending in a way. And it was kind of anti-Black. And I was really like surprised too, Dr. Perry, because this was a Black person who was saying that. So I didn't get it that time. But when I got in Forbes the Culture and applied again with the editor at the time, Brienne, who's my friend, it worked out. And I'm really grateful for it.
That was the place where you needed to be. That was the place, because it is for the culture. I mean, one of the things I like about you, Kenny, is that you're very much who you are, true to who you are. Obviously, you're going to write in the journalism standards. That's not what I'm saying, but you are true to who you are in terms of like hearing the story, telling the story. And storytellers, especially Black storytellers, we want to tell the truth. That's the reason why we want to be storytellers. Any of the speakers in Speakers Magazine, they are speaking the truth, truth to power. So you did the Force for the Culture. So you write for them. Who are some of the people that you interviewed there, or some of the people that are like some of the fun people that you have interviewed over the years?
Oh my gosh, it's so many. I'm just gonna say I'm so grateful to write for that publication. I'm so grateful to have interviewed so many people. I think one of my favorite, or my all-time favorites, was, I have to start with Cash Doll, a Detroit native, a Detroit rapper. Well, she's not a Detroit rapper; she's a rapper from Detroit. She's worldwide. That's one of my favorite rappers.
Okay.
When I tell you that interview, it was just off the chain with positivity, good energy. Like, and most interviews, they are like, what, 20 or 30 minutes at most. Our interview was like an hour too, because that's, that's talking to one of your favorite rappers.
Yes.
She was so sweet.
That's the fun part.
And I would say also Trina, that's another one of my favorite rappers since I was at Cass. That was a good conversation, and she was very affirming, because when I was at Cass, everybody knew me. If you graduated with me from Cass Tech, you know that I love Trina, like to the point where our names were synonymous.
Oh my God. Okay.
So just to interview her, and then it was like during the year, my 10-year anniversary since graduating too.
That was a full circle moment. Now, how did Viola Davis, because I see that you were interviewing her on video. That's one of my favorites.
When I tell you, Dr. Perry, well, first, like, I was nervous because, what do you say to Miss Viola Davis? Like, she's the Viola Davis, more than a superstar. She's a legend.
She's an icon.
We had like 4 minutes, and I was already nervous. So when they gave me the timeline, I'm like, oh my gosh, how can I get this information out of, one of the world's icons in 4 minutes? But she was so nice. Her husband, Julius Tennant, he was also starring in the movie Air with her, because that's what it was for. He
Mm-hmm.
was very nice too, but it was just a great experience. And she was very lovely too, because not her team, but the team who organized the press junket for all the journalists, they were in a private chat like, okay, you got to wrap this up. You got to wrap this up. But me and Miss Viola Davis, we were having a good time, a good conversation. So I was like, I can't cut Viola Davis off. Like, I'm not about to go viral for cutting that icon off. So he was so nice and she was so sweet.
Oh, that is good. That is good. And so one of the things too, Kenny, is that when people see that you're writing for Essence or you're interviewing, do you get pitched often from like other people who have businesses or other people who know that you may have some ends with certain publications? Are you pitched often? And tell us some things that someone who wants to be in Forbes or someone who wants to be in Uptown Magazine or someone who wants to be in Essence, what they should and should not do from their standpoint when they're pitching you.
So I get the most pitches for Forbes. And with Essence, I was blessed to write 2 articles for them throughout my career. And I pray that one day, I can be a contributor for them full time. So I don't get pitches for them just because it was only twice, but really
Mhm.
it's for Forbes that I get the most pitches from. People
Mhm.
will DM me on Instagram. People will comment on my Instagram posts. People will find me on LinkedIn. People will email me. And I don't say that like in a complaining type of way, but it's overwhelming a lot because it's just me managing this. And I'm like, I have a full-time 9 to 5 job too on top of this. So I
Right.
think people look at my journalism opportunities that I share as like, oh, this is his full-time role. But no, I work from like 9 to 5 as a press manager at a racial justice organization. Then I'm
Mhm.
doing my interviews after work. So it gets to be a lot.
Right.
And I would say what sticks out to me when I'm looking at pitches for those who want to, for those who want to be in Forbes or
Mhm.
want me to interview them or write about them, what really sticks out is a relatable story.
Okay.
Because I've been blessed to like interview a lot of celebrities, and I'm so grateful for that. But that's not the criteria for who I interview. I
Right.
like to interview people who have relatable stories, who have real stories that are inspiring,
Mhm.
impactful, who just make me say, okay, when I write this story, this is going to touch somebody.
Yes.
So those
Yes.
are the stories that I look for.
Yes, yes. Because a lot of people think that, oh, I want to get out there and get known, name this podcast. All I have to do is just have someone, you know, wave a magic wand. This is my little wave a magic wand, make me famous, make me famous. It's like, you know what? The journalist's job is not to make you famous because you just heard Kenny say that he works not only as press manager at another organization, but he does his other journalism part after that. So most journalists have been on the grind for a while. Their job is not to make anyone famous. Their job is not to build your business. Their job is not to create sales for you. They just are looking for good stories. And Kenny's main thing is that his beat, pop culture, black culture, LBGTQ plus is part of that. Uh, Also, too, making sure that he probably brings a little bit of his background from Detroit as well. So if you have a Detroit connection, have you interviewed Big Sean before?
Yes. Oh my gosh. For when I was at Blavity News, I interviewed
I
him.
was wondering. Yes.
He's so cool. And
Yes.
like, because he went to Cass Tech too. He
I
graduated from
know.
Cass
I
Tech.
know.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, for us, that is like the creme de la creme. So
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
when we were chatting, he was so cool, very, very patient. Because when you're interviewing certain icons, I try to keep it together for most people, but for some people, Dr. Perry, I'm gonna be honest, I get so excited, and you can just tell through the phone. And he was very patient, and he gave really great answers. And I really appreciate what he does for not only just for the world and his community service, but really for Detroit. Like, he does so much for our city.
He does. He really does. That's what I was wondering if you did because he went to Kansas from Detroit and he's a rapper with that kind of thing. So you were at Michigan State. I know when they had their the shooting there. I know you probably just like everybody who went to Michigan State. Period. Just really had was probably losing it during that time, watching on CNN and the kids not knowing where the shooter was. Where were you during that time and what were you doing and thinking?
I was at home. I live in Detroit. I was at home when I heard about it and was seeing it on the news. And I was sad and I was horrified too, because when I was in grad school, so in undergrad, I got the Michigan State, we were talking earlier, I got the Michigan State Black Alumni Scholarship in undergrad, but in grad school, I was the advisor for those students too.
Okay.
So, and I still talk to a lot of them too. So those are like my babies, you know what I'm saying? Even the
Mm,
ones who I don't know who are in this current generation of Spartans, those are my babies. So I was thinking about all the students and concerned with them, but it
mm,
really, it was a little bit more personal too, because I had developed relationships with so many students throughout the years after I graduated too, that,
mhm,
you know,
mhm,
that I consider like my babies, like my little siblings or whatnot. So I was
mm.
very sad and just very frightened and just, I immediately wanted it to just end, that
I
terrible.
know. It is. It's like one of those things where they're showing the camera places where you went or places that you know, or this is the hallway that you see. Those are the kind of things. It's just like everybody was just freaking out, and it just it says something to uh journalists too, because they're on campus, they're trying to cover it. They don't know where the shooter is either. So you got to think about a lot of journalists and reporters and things like that when they're reporting the story. Some of them are in danger too. You're not, you know they're not invincible. Okay, so they don't have on, they're not the police when they're out there with the microphone is not a weapon.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just a microphone, so they could actually be in the line of duty of being, being in there. So just knowing the bravery that comes with that when they're covering and that kind of thing. I saw, the Lansing reporters and that sort of thing. It was a big story. I was like, oh my God. I said, they are just so nervous. So anyway, but that was what I was just wondering, if how that affected you as well, in terms of like really putting together stories now and talking to different people. If you even talk to some, did you ever work for the Michigan State newspaper while you were there?
No, I never worked for the state news, but I was a writer for this publication called The Odyssey, and they have
Okay.
those at like, most universities. And when
Yeah.
I was at The Odyssey, what I would do is, how I believe it's Jet, how they have the beauty of the week.
Mm-hmm.
I would highlight women of color on campus, like for
Ooh,
my own beauty of the week segment.
that is cool. Yeah.
And it was fun too, because I would highlight, because I had a lot of women friends while I were there, a lot of women of color friends. And I would be like, hey, I got this deadline next week, and I know you're killing stuff on campus. You're really successful. You want to sit down for an interview? And they would always be down, and it was really cool. And they were very supportive, and I'm still grateful for that.
Do they still do that? Do they still do that part in Odyssey, or when you left, did they stop that feature?
I'm not sure. I have to check. I know when I was still there, and because I had stopped writing just because it was getting closer to graduation, but I
Right.
didn't see that. I didn't see that feature or vertical when I had left. So hopefully
Yeah.
somebody picked it up.
That's a really good thing. So one of the things too, when you are want to be a writer, want to be a journalist, so many times might even talk about Tyler Oakley. Just flip open your camera, start your own blog, do your own stories. I mean, so many times we're waiting on different people to create an opportunity for us. Do it for yourself. Tyler Oakley is Aubrey was the one that told me about him, and I was like, oh my God. I said, this guy is like amazing. He has like gazillion people follow him on YouTube or Twitch or wherever it is. I was like, but basically he did not wait for to be discovered. He just went out there and started doing it, which is the same thing that you're doing. You're just writing, you're making sure that you're in the right places and learning to network. So I just appreciate you just coming on and telling people about, your journey, get out there, get known. I mean, there's so many different journalists. Are you a part of NABJ? Because that's in Detroit. And they have their 40th anniversary coming up. I put a plug in for NABJ. Those are my buddies. But the National Association of Black Journalists are having their 40th anniversary this summer.
I want to join, and I'm setting a goal to get more involved with NABJ,
Okay.
because I realize that I'm blessed to have a lot of journalism connections, like just from people, who are not in
Being in
Detroit
this.
or all over, but I want more journalism connections in Detroit too, and to make
Okay.
friends in those realms. So it's on my goal list to get more involved and get to know other journalists in Detroit for sure.
Well, you are going to have that happen. That is one of the main things. I'm going to send you the link right after that. We have our Zoom meeting tomorrow. So I will send you the Zoom link for you to join us as a guest tomorrow on our Zoom. We have a monthly meeting on Zoom so that you can meet Vincent. Vincent McGraw is with, he used to be with the Detroit News, and then there's Vicki Thomas, who's a Journalism Hall of Famer and all that kind of stuff. So you need to meet them, because one of the things in our community is that we want to make sure that we're passing the baton along. So you are one of those people that's up and coming, and NABJ has been around for a long, long time, but we want to make sure that we're passing along the baton along to the next generation, so they can take it and run with it as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. Kenny, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we kind of wrap up?
Well, one, I want to thank you, Dr. Perry, for inviting me on. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm very grateful. And I will say before we wrap that, a lot of people, a lot of younger folks, and it's crazy saying younger folks because I used to be a younger folks, but I'm pushing 30.
Right. I was gonna say the millennials are now getting a little bit older. They can't really start saying that they're young anymore, because the millennials are up there.
Yeah, it was like I used to be a young tenderoni a few years ago. Now I'm Uncle Kenny. But I will say that a lot of younger journalists who are graduating college, who are just getting their feet wet, and I'm still getting my feet wet, I consider. But they always ask me, like, how do I get involved, or how do I get in these spaces? And for those watching, my advice is to one, make sure you're working hard, and that's already a given, because I think Black journalists, I think we're superheroes.
Yeah, we do it.
Yeah, we do it, like just Black media professionals, period. But also too, when you see these like celebrity interviews, when you see folks like myself or other entertainment journalists interviewing these celebrities or in these spaces, don't do it for that. Like, make sure you're doing it for you, because if you're doing it for that, you'll burn out really quickly, because you can go meet a celebrity. It's so accessible. You can meet celebrities on Instagram. Make sure you're really doing it because you want to tell the stories that need to be told, that are going to impact other people. Because if you can write, if you can speak, those are literal superpowers that are gifted to you from the Most High. And you want to make sure you're using them for good to impact the people. Because a lot of people, when they think of journalists, some people might not consider us in a high regard, which I clearly disagree with, but you are a superhero, and it's your duty to really tell those stories that is going to make somebody say, you know what, this story that so-and-so wrote, that really helped me get through my day. That saved me. So just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yes, that is it. That is it. Make sure that your intentions are correct, motivation is correct, and you will go far. You'll go far. And it's really heart-centered. And reading your bio, I want people to make sure that they go to your website and read that bio again, and shout out to your friend KennyWilliamsJr.com. And then I put your reel down there as well, so people can actually look at your YouTube reel as well, so that they can they want to hire you to do any red carpet stuff or any of that kind of stuff, just basically, you could do all the things. So I look forward to seeing so much more from you. That what you've done so far has just been amazing. I'm so glad that you are Michigan State, Cass Tech, Eastside Detroit, doing all the things. And I'm going to make sure that you get that NABJ link, and then you connect with another great group of people as well. So thank you so much, Kenny, for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. I'm so grateful.
Cool. All right. Thank you for joining us, and I will talk with you soon.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. I'll talk to you soon.
All righty. Bye-bye. So that was Kenny. I just love that young man. So with that, I am Pam Perry, and I am out.
You've been listening to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast, brought to you by PamPerryPR.com, where you'll get insider tips on how to build your platform, pitch the media, and promote yourself with confidence. Head over to PamPerryPR.com and get the exclusive video training on the 7 must-have marketing materials you need before you pitch in order to be considered in media places or superstar stages. PamPerryPR.com, where you help you shine like a superstar.